Hi, I'm Teresa Duncan.
And I'm Kevin Henry.
Welcome to Chew on This.
We are excited to bring you our views of current topics in the dental industry and put a little different spin on them, giving you something to chew on.
If you need to jump off, be sure to check the show notes for links as well as how to get in touch with us.
And now, let's give you something to chew on.
And we are back with another episode of Chew on This. Kevin, what's up?
The melodic tunes of Teresa Duncan. It is always good to hear. Always. I'm ready for a good episode today. Let's rock it.
Well, last episode, I was lazy. And so this time around, you're like, you got to work this time, right? So I am going to bring two stories, one suggested by you, but you're just like, you talk about it. So I'm going to do that.
All right. Come on. It is.
So apparently, Kevin, let me pull this up here. We're going to talk about dental x-rays and sex. And I know like those are two things that when I talk to your wife, she says, please don't bring those up together. He turns into a wild man.
Yeah. See, the mature rating just went up on the podcast, but it's a different kind. Let's be honest here. So, hey.
All right. So let me bring up this article here. And of course, we will put it on the show notes. But basically so Brazil. People in Brazil. Oh, that's right. We're going south to Brazil. I forgot that we're traveling. All right. So I wish I had I don't know what Amazon music would be, like just some nice melodic boating down the Amazon and dodging piranha.
It's kind of like Jungle Cruise with Disney, it's exactly like that.
That's what I need. Okay. All right. So basically they ran a ton of x-rays through AI and dental x-rays and found that 96% accuracy in determining the sex of the person that they were running through. And I didn't realize this, Kevin, but if we ran your x-rays through and my x-rays through, yours would be fiercely masculine, right?
Fiercely. Yes.
Fiercely. And then mine would be just so delicate feminine because I'm so delicate.
You are the delicate flower. There's no question. Yes.
So basically 96% accuracy, they have found that you can take a look at somebody's x-rays and determine whether or not they are male or female, which for somebody who's walking around and living that's nice, but this is really important, Kevin, for people who are in the forensics field. So now when we pull up the bodies, the bones and everything, basically the way to determine whether or not it was male or female was by their bone structure, their hips, got some birthing hips going or big, strong shoulders, that kind of thing. But if you just find a skull or if the bones are fractured, you really can't tell if it was a man or a woman. And now with 96% accuracy, you can. It's really not good for them, Kevin, because they're already dead. But basically, it's good to identify those. They're not recognizable. So as a true crime buff, people die by fire, people decompose, right? And so when you're able to take a look at the skull and the teeth, it's going to be much easier to figure that out. And then of course, if they have the teeth, you can then tap into the DNA. And nowadays you can identify them if they're in the banks, but people in Pompeii and stuff, the only things that are really lasting are the teeth because they are the hardest substance in our body. Is that correct? I believe that's correct.
I believe that is correct. Yes. Absolutely.
So what do you think about this, Kevin?
I'll be honest, I have not read the article yet. This is something we went through in our pregame here. But, the male molar versus the female molar, I'm really curious to see what distinguishes the two. How can you tell that came out of a female's mouth? Is it diet? Is it wear? What is it? So I'm very, very curious to see.
Yeah, I am too, because quite frankly, the fact they didn't go into detail, I'm assuming that's probably the next thing is are there specific markers? Are there heights? You would think that would be pretty well studied right now, but they don't. How do you figure that out? I will say my mom can chew like crazy. She had to have night guards and she always had to have her upper molars, the crowns on those redone because her bite forces were so strong. I would put her molar up against the Rock's molar any day. What do you think of that?
I would too. I'm just telling you. Absolutely.
The Rock's his ears are burning. Who's talking about my molars? What's going on?
Why are people talking about my teeth right now? Okay.
Okay, so basically, they're going to do more studies and they are going to try to incorporate a wide range of human remains, images from human remains. It's good for like mass events and things like that, you know.
For sure.
So, luckily, most of those are historical, way historical, but should we need to have it in the future or in present times, then we'll have that going. So,
Yeah, I'll be curious to read more about this. And it's also something, you know, and again, I know AI is tied into this. And so it's just another one of those things where we talk about how AI is going to change our lives. Yeah. Is it going to be something that really helps us reconstruct crime scenes in the future? You know, all these different things.
well, one thing that popped into my head because I'm not right in the head is you know these people that of course we talk about these TikTokers
Oh, yes.
who are always doing funky things to their teeth, right? And even before TikTok, we heard stories of people who would shave their teeth to look like vampires,
Yes.
right? Do you remember
Yes.
that? Like
I
that
do.
was, when you went through the goth stage, you'd run into people like that. But even so, like, people do some weird stuff, right? So imagine traveling band of vampire rock stars. Just bear with me. They have done their
Wow.
teeth to look like vampires, right? They get into an accident and now we're looking at these, that fire burns up, whatever. I know people are like, what is she talking about? So they go to x-ray the teeth and you think there's some Brazilian doctor that just kind of leans back in the chair and goes, I think these are vampires.
Yeah.
And another Brazilian dentist is like, oh, that's impossible. He's like, I'm telling you right here. Look at him. Like
These are
AI. And
vampires. It's
AI.
very obvious. Yeah.
And the AI screen is going, genus, vampire. I'm sorry. This is what went through my head.
Yeah.
Like somebody's going to game this system without even realizing they're gaming the system.
There are times when I sit back and I go, that sentence has never been uttered in the history of mankind. And traveling band of vampire rock stars, I think you've nailed it. I really do. So
All right. So I dare you to lead with that line
that
on
is
Bicuspid, on
fantastic.
Dr. Bicuspid.
I'm going to figure
Vampire?
out, yeah, how, like a Greater New York, and whenever I'm up on stage, I'm going to figure out how I work in the vampires at some point, and pirates and zombies, of course. As we can't lose track of those. But hey,
You got to do what I do to my poor audiences. I put up a tooth of a canine, well, a dog's molar,
okay.
so a canine molar, and I put it up on the screen and I say, "Can anybody tell me what tooth number this is?" And people legit are like, what tooth number is it?" And I'm like, "No, I'm kidding, you guys. It's a dog." But it's funny because a couple people will get it, and then the other ones are like, "Why are they showing it?" There's two reactions. There's like laughter, and then there's what she's weird. So
See,
I'm used
see,
to them.
those are the people you watch in the rest of your presentation. The ones who think you're weird, you're just like, come on.
That's right. That's my eye contact people. Okay, so you want to come out of Brazil and come into the U.S., Kevin? You want to talk
Yeah, and
about
not
that
just
stuff?
one place in the U.S., but how about our entire country? How about the whole sea to shining sea thing here?
Yeah. So.
Because I have a
Mhm.
feeling a few of our listeners saw the article in USA Today, which was a big blow up article. And if you didn't see it, of course, we'll link it in the show notes. But it went very in depth on dentistry and how that we have a problem in dentistry. And I don't think this, for those of us in the industry, I don't think this surprised any of us. But not only do we have an access to care issue in the United States, but we also have an issue where a lot of people can't afford the dentistry that they need. And there are only so many missions of mercy and charity events that can help people get the pain alleviated and get the smile that they want or desire. And so USA Today did a very deep dive into this. And I will tell you, they talked to Brett Kessler, the president of the American Dental Association, for it. They talked to numerous dental patients, I will say, that have had issues in the past, whether it's they need implants and can't get them, or they need some kind of work done with their gums and are unable to have that periodontal disease taken care of. But it was a very interesting article, at least from my perspective, that it shone not a very positive light on our industry. And the takeaway that I got is that there's so many people in need. We realize that there's a problem, and yet dentistry is trying to make a dollar. And I
Yeah.
want to just say there's nothing wrong with that because every business has to make money in order to succeed, including
Hmm.
medical practices, dental practices, veterinarians, everything in the healthcare field has to make money. And you can't give away everything for free. But yet we know that maybe now more than ever, there's more need out there as well. And there are pockets of our country where there's just not enough dentistry or resources to meet those needs.
Right, right. And the resources piece is key. What I definitely took away from this, and of course, I think you and I have read enough pieces from alternating viewpoints where we can see all sides. And I think that there are significant points to all sides, and we'll go over that in a second. But the reality is, you hit it on the head. Like, you have to be able to be profitable in order to continue providing the service. So, do we then not be profitable by giving everything away? And, Dr. Kessler said that you can't give everything away for free, because at one point you're going to have can't afford your assistants. You're going to have to cut back. Like, rent is expensive. Like, the landlord's not going to say, hey, you're doing pro bono stuff, so I'm going to give you rent pro bono. It just doesn't work that way. But at the same time, you read these heartbreaking stories about people who, are sent to the emergency room. And I think it was in this article, or it could have been a linked article, where the lady went to the emergency room. The emergency room physicians, and this is a known fact, are not trained in oral health. And they basically sent her home with antibiotics. And the family, she died. And the family, said that they were never told that this infection could actually kill her. Like, they thought it was just a tooth infection, right? And it sounded nasty. It sounded like her, like a terrible way to go. It sounded like her neck turned black from the site of the infection and everything. And it's like, wow, like, I can't even imagine the pain, right? So really, what's going on with this? And so before we get too deep into it, is that there's, over time, bills have been pushed through saying, look, we need to get more funding to the Medicaid services, the VA, the Veterans Administration, government health services, and all of that. And so, money is allocated. It's never enough money, but, how much is enough to get everybody back to healthy? That's hard, right? And so the other issue is there's not enough people to give the money to, as far as providers. Like, there's just Medicaid providers, we're not flush with them. VA providers, we're not flush with them either. And I don't want to scare people, but I read these things and I think, okay, the outrage is there for sure. Like you said, it doesn't shine a good light on us. We talk about Great Britain all the time and their dental, Australia, and some of the larger countries that it's mandated to, you need to be a part of the system or completely out of the system, completely fee for service. And the numbers are not good, right? So when you read these types of articles, and of course we'll link it, Kevin, do you put on your journalist hat or do you put on the patient hat?
Mm.
Like, when you read this stuff, like, what's your first
Yeah,
inclination?
that's a good question. Honestly, I look at it from a dental journalist perspective. So I try to combine the two. And I guess a little bit of my PR hat as well,
Mhm.
and try to think about what is this saying about where we are and is it telling the complete story? I mean, that's one thing that I think you and I both are big fans of is we need to hear everything, not just one side of the story.
Yeah.
And I was very interested as we read through the article to talk about, the access to care and everything else. And in my mind, that's always been where you live, what part of the country you live in. But there was one
Mhm.
gentleman that was interviewed in there, and it was the one that stuck out to me the most, honestly, because he's in Las Vegas. And one of the things that
Mm.
he said was that he went to a dental practice and was basically shamed for not being able to afford the treatment that he needed. And that stood out to me more than anything else because those are the stories that are going to catch more attention than anything else because that's
For
whenever
sure.
our industry is seen as elitist. It's seen as, only for those who can afford it, not for the others. And yet you and I both know how much good is done by this industry, how much charity is given by this industry.
Yeah.
We've both been a part of events where kids are lined up, getting those treatments that they need. Missions of Mercy where adults are there and they're standing in line since 8 in the morning, to hopefully get in, and be part of this. I do look at it from how is this going to impact our industry and how are people who are outside going to view what we do every day because so much good is done in dentistry and that's never the stuff that we hear about. We always hear about
Right.
the dental practices that shut down or the dentist who the office manager who embezzles or the dentist who takes advantage of his patients or whatever it might be. And I think that that's
Mhm.
where we've got to try to turn the ship around and say, okay, we know these are problems. And I think Brett Kessler did a good job of that, saying this is what we're trying to do. but there's
Mhm.
only so much that you can do to really, and you can't alleviate the entire problem right now.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's gonna be really hard to do that. And actually, it was I never seen this quote before, so I was surprised they quantified it. In 2018, the ADA's Health Policy Institute estimated that dentists gave 800 million in discounts and 1.6 billion in free care. Give Kids a Smile, Missions of Mercy. I know there's a lot of religious organizations. I think the Christian Dental Association, they do a ton of work. I think I'm
For
getting the
sure.
name of that association correct. And then another 6.1 million patients in 22 received dental care from federally funded community health centers, and that's your Indian Health Services, VA, all, federally qualified health centers. One thing that's been the current administration has put forth a rule, and this is going to impact us in 2027. It goes into play in 27, that if states should choose, so this is not just a states' rights thing, so all the medical exchanges are run by the states will have the option to offer dental care, adult dental care, as part of their mandated health benefits that will be sold on the exchange. Well, if that's the case, then there's going to be a lot of policies that have to be written before then, but it could open the door and give people a lot more benefits. However, what it is they're going to also be expanding the Medicaid numbers and access to some of the public health services. But it says there's a provision in there to increase the number of dentists, dental hygienists, and dental therapists nationwide. Okay, that's nice. Dr. Bernie Sanders, I guess, is wanting to put forth a more comprehensive plan that includes all that. But first of all, there is no one size fits all. There's cons to every pro that is around this issue. But as far as the workforce is where we need to focus on,
Right.
and it's not just hygienists, like we need to get more people in dentistry. Dentistry is bleeding. You talk about some of the auxiliaries in medical, like a lot of physician assistants, and you look at phlebotomists and things like that. Like the numbers just aren't not as prevalent as they used to be. And so if we don't have the workers, we doesn't matter how many dentists you throw into a public health service, if there's no hygienist to clean teeth, we're still not catching early disease, screening and that type of thing. So basically, this was an opinion piece. Basically, they were saying that, our system is broken. I don't know if our system is broken. I think there are more broken systems out there.
No, for sure. I
Okay.
agree.
I do think that we're operating pretty well. I think there's lots of opportunities for people to get dental health care. However, it is, like you said, not uniform, right? Like if you don't know the system, and this is something that I see all the time when I go on Reddit, is, you got to go to this place and you got to go to this place, you got to go to this dental school. So it's almost like you have to do some research to find out where you can get your teeth cleaned if you don't have insurance. And that's tough
Yeah.
because most people working two jobs and stuff, they don't have time to do this thing. Oh, and that's another thing is, reading through this article is like you cannot go and get a job. You can't go to a job interview. You can't get, really paid attention to professionally unless you have not just a beautiful smile, but at least you have teeth.
Yeah.
Right. So can imagine not going into a job interview and somebody for a dental receptionist position. Like, I mean, I hate to say she's got to have teeth or he's got to have teeth. So I get what they're saying.
Yeah. And there is that trickle down. Absolutely. When you don't have the teeth, you can't get the job interview, you can't eat what you want to, all these different things. I mean, it's a problem. And I think those
Hmm.
people outside of dentistry don't realize how big of a problem that is. But what you said a minute ago is exactly right. I mean, I can think of areas in my home state of Oklahoma. I can think of areas here in my new home state of Colorado that are thriving because everybody wants to be in the metropolitan areas. But these rural areas, they still exist in such a big way. And how are you going to
Hmm.
entice a doctor or a hygienist or assistants or whatever it is to go to these rural areas and know that they can still make good money, have a good living, get everything that they want instead of the Vegases, the Miamis, the Denvers, wherever it might be that are much more appealing. And I think
Right.
that's where we've got to try to figure out. We not only have to reach these areas, but we have to have the people who actually want to be there as well. And again, can make a living. That's the key thing. They can't just go there and do
Mhm.
good and make sure everybody is well if they're suffering themselves because they're not able to, make their own rent or do whatever it is.
Well, they profiled, to your point about, not everybody can go there or wants to go there into these areas. They profiled a dentist, Dr. Gansor. I don't know. I feel like I'm butchering that. Timothy Gansor is in Jacksboro, Kentucky,
Mhm.
and Kentucky is just beautiful. There are parts of Kentucky that are just gorgeous. But he is one of two dentists, he told USA Today, one of two dentists who accept Medicaid in a 25-mile region north of Knoxville. And it includes two rural counties. So, like, this dude's covering a lot of space. So he said he offers patients a discount of up to 10%, but he can't afford to lop off much more costs because he's got to pay for staff,
Sure.
equipment, insurance to stay open, and other expenses. Tennessee expanded adult dental benefits. And so everybody's been calling him, and he has like a 3-month wait for Medicaid patients. But his problem, he said, is that Medicaid pays far less than private insurance and people who can pay, just cash. So he has to have a healthy mix of insured patients and Medicaid patients and all of that. And he has to limit the number of bookings for Medicaid patients. And I understand this. They will take over your practice. And I don't mean that like in a terrible way, but when people realize there's a dentist that takes Medicaid, they will go there. And
Sure.
so it could quite literally take over the practice. And I've seen it, in my early days of consulting, I saw where we'll participate because we want to be a part of and give back. And then all of a sudden their office is totally taken over and they get a reputation as a Medicaid office, which then drives away other patients, and not going to get into that because it's not a great situation, but that's reality.
Well, I mean, one thing that we just ran an article on Dr. Bicuspid recently about the dentist who comes out of school has the highest debt to income ratio of any profession that is out there right now. And we
That's
know that
wild.
on average, according to the American Dental Education Association, it's just under $300,000, that they come out with debt. Every dental student will
But
come
that's
out
the
with,
average,
on
right?
average,
Some are
exactly on average.
higher for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. So again, their first thought, and mine would be as well, is how am I going to pay down that debt? And it is to either work at a DSO or whenever they can actually open their own practice, they want to have a practice where they're making money so that they can have a good living and pay down this debt. So
For
there's that
sure.
other thought there as well, is that, there's only so much I can do to balance everything that personally I've got to deal with as well. So I think there's a lot of layers to this issue. And it's not like, and God bless Bernie Sanders or any other politician that wants to take this on and try to fix it. I think it's great, but this is a multi-layer thing that's not just
Yeah.
going to be fixed by one piece of legislation.
Well, and you hear a lot, well, in private insurance hasn't raised their rates and all this time, or in some areas they have, but in some areas they've cut for sure. But there's something to be said for these Medicaid programs where not only are they starting out way below what insurers would pay, but you don't get a lot of bumps in that. There are states where Medicaid pays very well, actually better than some PPO plans, but that's not the norm. So I do think that there are a lot of patients out there that need to be seen, and it's going to continue. And, we've had an increase in population for other reasons, and they're going to need to be seen as well. And so these ERs, and this is where they do the studies, is the ERs are going to they're going to see it. I mean, we're going to see the impact on our emergency healthcare services. Or it's terrible. I can't imagine somebody sitting at home and in tooth pain. The one time I had serious tooth pain, I thought I would have just chopped the side of my face off. It was awful. Did not know tooth pain was like that. And I'd been in dentistry, years. And, I was always sympathetic, but now I'm really sympathetic. It's awful. You can't even focus. So
Yeah.
have you had pain like that where you can't even focus?
Once, and I will tell you, like you said, you don't forget it, and so I can't imagine having it day upon day upon day. That's the thing
Mm-hmm.
that luckily you and I both have the resources that we can get it taken care of. That we
Right.
can, and I know not a lot of people fall into that boat. I mean, the guy from Las Vegas going back in and trying to get in touch with Dr. Phil and all these TV shows to go on and tell his plight so somebody will help him, and I was just going, there's such a desperation out there. And that's what I took away from this article. And I certainly don't blame anyone because we don't know the story of how they got to this point. But the
Mm-hmm.
desperation that's out there right now and how it's butting up against the business needs and the reality of running a business and staying in business. They're just it's such an impact right now.
It's funny you mentioned the thing about we don't make judgments on how they got there or whatever. I noticed in the article that it was all the people who were in dire straits. I think all of them actually had either a systemic issue,
Yeah.
cancer, one had sepsis. Like
Yep.
there were extenuating circumstances to all of that. And I was like, I understand the need to justify why their teeth are so bad. But quite frankly, a lot of people out there have terrible teeth and just they've never been told how to take care of their teeth. They've never been told that you can, maybe put fluoride or whatever preventive measure. Like there's a ton of people out there where it's just not a thing in their culture, or they just haven't been taught about it. So I like that they add in that these are the extreme cases, but there's a ton of people out there walking around with terrible teeth. They're like 1 week away from having the worst weekend of their life, right? Because of tooth pain. I feel like they were trying to justify why these people's teeth were so bad. You're not going to find a population anywhere in the US where everybody, I mean, I don't know, maybe some small town in Long Island by the bay, like where everybody has super rich, right? Like the Hamptons, but even they have nasty teeth, right? So there's nasty teeth everywhere. So I
Sure.
kind of feel like, why did you need to justify it with the fact that they had this, and this? Like, nasty teeth are an American thing, right? Like, I mean, let's just say it.
But but it also, it leaned into that oral systemic thing that we've talked about forever,
Hmm.
and how that everything's kind of connected in the body. And I think
Yeah.
whenever we start rolling our eyes about, God, do we have to talk about the oral systemic link again? There comes this reminder that, yeah, we do. And there's a reason why. And we need to be better
Yeah.
connected with the medical industry and have those referrals back and forth. And talking to, you brought up the ER a couple of times. How many times are we as a dental industry going into the emergency rooms and saying, if somebody comes in with this, here's what you do, here's how we can
Yeah.
help each other, and
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
so important.
Well, and here's the thing, and we'll end this because we got really animated on this. Do we wrap it up into medical care so it becomes more of a covered benefit? Because right now, in individual dental plan, the numbers don't work to cover catastrophic. Like, it's only meant to give you 1,500 or 1,800. That's it. That's all they're meant to give you. If we want to change that and make this part of a bigger package, independent dentistry, well, not just in dentistry as we know it is completely changed. You can't go back. It's not like we're going to go, we don't like this. Can we go back to our
Yeah.
CDT codes and
And I
claim
think
form?
more people
No,
would
no.
say no to that than yes, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, I would, only
Yeah.
because I just know what a headache it's going to be. But, we're both getting close to retirement, Kevin. We got another, what, 20, 30 years right now.
Right.
Honestly, I think sometime soon after we retire, I think we will see that movement. I don't know. We'll see.
This next generation is going to have to figure that out. And luckily,
Yeah.
us soothsayers, us such strong KOLs will have to help them along the way. But yeah, please read this article, because I think if you didn't see it, it lets you know kind of the thought process that's going on out there outside of dentistry of what we do every day. And I think it's
Hmm.
really important to get into that patient mindset a little bit, for sure.
Yeah, it's always good to kind of stick your head out the door and see, what's going on outside of your office. So I'm pretty sure, Kevin, that you and I are going to be talking about this on our webinar on December 12th, and I
Absolutely.
will link it in the show notes. It'll be Chew on These Trends for 2025 is the title of the webinar. And we're going to try not to be so salacious, but I don't know how that's going to go. We're actually going to be serious and talk to you about the trends that we have seen this
We
past
are.
year and what we might see coming up. But do you think we can be a little salacious?
Well, I kind of signed up for the salacious. I mean, I'll be serious for a little bit, but come on, we got to give our listeners what they want. Come on.
Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to tell you that we're going to be serious. Like, to the vast majority who have not listened to this podcast, we're going to tell them this is trends. This is serious. You got to pay attention. And then we're going to be like, and did you know you can glitter up your dentures? That's what we're going to
Vampire
do.
teeth. There you go.
Vampire AI. I'm going to go get that website, vampire.ai. So, all right. Anything else, K Dog?
No, I'm excited. Absolutely. Make sure that you sign up for that on December 12th. I'm excited to do that with you. And, I'm already looking ahead to 2025 and some places that you and I may be doing that live in person. So that's going to be an awesome
Yep.
thing.
Yep. Yep. All right. Dear listeners, thank you so much for putting up with us as always. And we will see you on the next one.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Chew on This. We hope you laughed and learned a little.
Check out the show notes for any links we mentioned, and don't forget to give us a rating on your podcast app. Feel free to drop us a comment on social media or by email if you have any suggestions for future topics.
We'll be back in about 2 weeks. See you then.